people. We gotta see how we're gonna do this now. Alright, so we're gonna probably continue through here, right? I'll assume that. And we got the McDonald's. Oof. Ooh, and I got a good story. And that as we passed by the McDonald's, there was an old movie, you guys might have heard about it, called Super Size Me. I don't know if it rings any bells with you, but it's an older movie released in 2005. And as shocking as it is to say how far back 2005 was, or whatever year it was, I'm pretty sure it was around that time. But, you know, that movie really opened my eyes, right? And it, you know, it has some funny moments, it has different, you know, themes within the field. Movie, not field, we're not talking about work here, we're talking about a movie. But in the end, what it did was it opened my eyes, you know, to, you know, about what you're eating, what you're putting in your body, right? Your fuel, it's very important, right? And you, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a guy in New York, right? An adult. He has a girlfriend, a steady job, lives a normal, seemingly normal life, and what he decides to do is embark, you know, on this test or this experiment, because he would sometimes go out and eat McDonald's, and he wanted to know what would the effect be of eating that food, of eating that McDonald's every day of his life, right? For every meal for a certain amount of time. Of course he can't do it for the rest of life, right? Or else he probably could, but it would take very long. And so what he did was he went on this adventure, right? This McDonald's journey, which is what a lot of people kind of already do. Those passionate eaters of McDonald's, right? They go and eat it pretty much every day. I know I did, right? Growing up as a kid, you know, I would expect, you know, my Happy Meal, finishing school. That was like one of my highlights of my day, was finishing class and going to McDonald's and getting a Happy Meal and playing in the playground too. But what I had to realize was that it wasn't the right thing, which I was too young to realize that. But from that, you gotta realize what you're putting in your body, right? Is it really the best for you? And I'll say, you know, that McDonald's, that fast food really isn't. You know, it's arguably toxic. It's harming your body. And, you know, what you can take from that, you know, is to be aware of that, to know, because knowing is half the battle, right? Because if you didn't know that, you would still eat it, right? You wouldn't be able to be aware of what's going on and fight for yourself, right? And fight the urge to eat that, right? And that's not to say that you can't, right? But just to be aware, just to know. And from that, we'll bring up the example of the movie. Again, we'll go back into it and say that, you know, the main character, you know, ate McDonald's every day for every meal, even for a month or so. And what he started to see, and he went to a doctor every week and got visits, got his blood work done, got his weight, everything. And what he noticed, you know, after that, you know, experiment, right? A result of it was, and let's see where we're going. All right, we'll take 80th because it has a no outlet. We're exploring some new terrain here, so bear with me. And what he started to notice was everything started to shoot up. You know, all those negative things, his body fat, his cholesterol, his blood pressure, and his weight, of course, you know, after eating all that food And before he did this, he would eat normal home-cooked foods, eat out every once in a while, and live, you know, a basic, normal adult life. And doing this, you know, depending on this food for him made his life crazier, right? It made it almost unsustainable. Because if you go and you eat this healthy food, right, every day and every meal if you wanted to, it would be fine. You probably wouldn't run into any problems. You'd be okay, which is fine. But you gotta realize that if you go and eat this fast food every day of your life, you can't do it. And what that tells you is that this thing is probably not right for me. No, I shouldn't be dependent on it for my survival or my happiness, because that's what it comes down to. Because if you eat that stuff, you're subconsciously depending on it, you know, to survive and be alive, because you got to eat. It's a basic human need. So when you're doing this, you're cheating yourself in a way. You're cheating your body of better potential sources of that survival. Right? You want to give your body the best nutrients it can have. You don't want to be putting, and I'd like to even bring up the concept of, you know, a car. That would be like putting low octane fuel in your car, you know, and cheap oil and cheap parts, you know, to supply that car. You know, how well can you expect it to run if you're doing that, if you're harming it or impeding it with those lackluster, you know, care, with lackluster, yeah, you know, supplies. So, you know, and in the end, you know, you saw the results. He got more overweight, everything started to shoot up, and he almost started to develop, you know, complications of different diseases, right? Because that's what can happen to you. It's like a car, you know, if you put too much wear and tear on it, it'll break down. You know, it'll fall apart slowly. And one day, when you're driving it, you might get trapped on the road and you'll get stranded seemingly out of nowhere, right? Your car will just give out, and that's what can happen to you. So you can wake up one day, feel really bad, and have to go to the hospital, and it can catch you completely by surprise when you least expect it, right? When you're at work, sitting in front of a computer, right, for another day, you had your cup of joe, everything seems fine, but you nearly collapse, right? You almost faint, you feel weak, lightheaded, and that wasn't by accident. That just didn't happen, you know, by the snap of a finger. It was a process, right? It happened to you over time. You started to develop these issues and complications, right, from the habits that you had, you know, from, you know, and I even say, like, it's like work that you're doing on yourself. It's insufficient, but you're doing the wrong things, you're doing the wrong habits, and what that can do is make your body weak, right? Because what you're putting inside your body is weak in itself. And why, you know, are you going to put something in weak that's going to make your whole body weak and lower its quality to perform? So, and we really want to cross. All right, so we got half of this done, and the other half. All right, so now we're gonna go back. Wait, is this the right one? So 66. Oh, we're gonna head back on our way to where we were and head on out. Super Size Me. Yeah, and from that movie, I was nearly petrified to eat fast food. Right, I was scared to eat it. You know, every time I would drive by McDonald's or a fast food joint, I wouldn't look at it the same. You know, I would come to question it. You know, like, why would I put that in my body, right? I almost felt like it would be unnecessary. Like, this is not the right thing to do. Almost like a drug, which you can compare to that, right? Because just like a drug, it can be harmful, you know, and mess you up, right? Make you fat, give you heart disease, give you a stroke, all kinds of different complications. And from that, here, we'll turn right. And from that, you know, your quality of life will be lowered. You won't, you know, you'll be, you know, having to take these medications and pills, you know, to stay afloat, right? You won't be able to be a normal functioning human being, right? Arguably so, because, you know, your body and your mind is not the same. I hate to break it to you, but, you know, there's a deficiency there. And to prevent that, you gotta be aware. You know, when your friends and other people, or you yourself, you know, want, you know, to partake in these behaviors, to eat these foods, you gotta say no. You know, you gotta resist it. Because I did. Because ever since that movie came out, I have not eaten McDonald's or Burger King. I've resisted, you know, times, and there have been so many over the years where all my friends would eat that food, you know, and participate, you know, in putting that, I like to say, junk in their body. And I did it. And I got weird looks. I got questions thrown at me, the whole 9 yards. And I didn't care in the end. And it wasn't from a place of arrogance. It wasn't from a holier than thou perspective. It was just that I wanted, you know, the best for my body, right? And I had still respect for those people that would eat it. I wouldn't mind, you know, that they did. I would try to tell them, you know, make them aware of what they're doing. But, you know, and even then, you know, don't be surprised if even after you tell them, they don't listen to you. They don't want, you know, to follow your direction. And that's fine. You know, and even if they're presented, you know, with results, you know, you're like the Subway guy, Jared Fogle. Although I hate to use that example because of what he's done in his life afterwards, right? You know, he may not be the best role model to follow, but, you know, he had, you know, still what he did. And he lost, you know, he went from, I think it was like 300 pounds or something crazy, to like a skinny, normal looking, you know, 200 or 180 pound guy. Which, you know, he did by stopping, you know, eating his fast food, eating those fatty foods that he would put in his body. And he also went for walks, right, to burn off that weight, you know, in his community. And, you know, people rallied behind that. They were inspired by that. And, you know, using that simple example of him, right, just that part, right, none of the other part. Don't worry about that other part for now of his life. The scandals and all that, right, just this part, which is what you can use, you know, even from bad examples of people, right? You don't have to be blinded almost by their scandals or their controversies, right? There's still lessons to be learned from those people, right? People that you hate, right? I've learned from my enemies and people that I nearly despised or despised me over my life, right? And it'd be foolish, you know, to simply ignore, you know, my whole interactions with them or my whole conversations, everything, right? Just based upon that hate, right? That deep-seated anger or resentment towards them. But, you know, there's still lessons to be learned from that. It'd be foolish, you know, if you ignore that, right? Because you're not gonna let yourself be a better person from that experience. And you know what? You want to overcome that person, right? Because you probably, you know, hate that person. You want to be above them, right? Because that's probably what that hatred comes from. You know, you're feeling, you know, being, you know, greater than that person. They're below you, so you hate them, right? You wouldn't do that to someone you think is above you or with you. But how can you do that? How can you give yourself a greater chance of overcoming or overtaking them, right? They're in a car and you're racing them, right? You're in the rat race and you want to go in front of them. How do you do that? How do you speed up the car? Is by learning, you you know, from, you know, the conversations that you had with them, the talks that you have with these people, right? The experiences, the stories, right? And most of them will be bad because, you know, you don't like this person, and you don't forget them completely, but you can, you know, focus on the outcomes, right? What you got out of those stories, and learn from them, because that can be very important for you later on if you deal with similar people like that. Those harsh people, hard to deal with, and you know, it could change you and make you better. Dude, you have a red light. Your light's red. But people have to speed to a red light. He'd rather kill me than stop. He wants to enjoy his red. It's like, dude, your light's red, you're not going anywhere. Let's see. We gotta be out here and run. We're gonna do a checkup on our battery right now and see where we're at.